Hello, my name is Dave DeBroth. I'm a corporate chef, and I'm working with Direct Supply here today. And we are going to be doing an IDDSI presentation. IDDSI is the International Dysphagia Dietary Standardization Initiative. We just shorten it to IDDSI for convenience factor. We are going to start with the liquid level of IDDSI. We're starting at 0 on through 3, 0 being a baseline and 3 being the thickest, extremely thick. And I'll go through each one. So we're actually going to start today by making some juice. I have some strawberry juice and a little bit of watermelon. The juicer is nice that if I have product cut the day before or 2 days ahead of time and it starts to lose its plate appeal, starts to break down and look a little rough, there's nothing wrong with that fruit, but it just doesn't look very sexy on the plate. So we want to do something with that fruit instead of throwing it out. So what we're going to do is add it to the juicer. I already have some strawberries and apples and watermelon in here. I'm going to add some carrots to add some potassium to the juice. And this way we save ourselves some money on just throwing stuff away when we can utilize it for something else. And then we'll take that juice, and if I just started with this level right here, this would be my baseline of 0. And the way we check the thicknesses on these is we use a syringe. This is a 12 milliliter syringe. I'm going to fill it with 10 milliliters of liquid, pull the plunger out, and basically my 0 is going to be completely out of the plunger. This one should be down between 0 and 4 milliliters. This will be between 8 and 10, or roughly in that ballpark. And so you can use immersion blenders. They come in as every size you can imagine, on up to giant ones. It takes about an entire group to hold on to. Regular blenders, mixers, spindle mixers, you name it. I like the immersion blender because it's portable and I can take it anywhere I need to be. And we'll start off here. The thing with these thickeners, they are a modified food starch. They are activated without the presence of heat, like a cornstarch needs heat to thicken it. This will thicken on its own. What it will continue to do is thicken as it sits. So always give it about 10 minutes rest to go back and check it. As it chills, if you're using cold juice, it's going to get a little thicker. If it's room temperature, it's going to be a little thinner. So always check it at whatever temperature you're going to serve that product. And then I'll set that aside. And then we'll go through the different levels. Here I have my base juice of 0. We're going to fill our plunger up. In about 10 seconds, it pretty much all drains out of the syringe. Okay, no brain work on that one. That's straight out of the jug. And then number 1, we want to have almost the entire syringe emptied, but a little slower evacuation on it. It'll get down about 1 or 2 and just kind of peter out, just like that. And then we'll go on into level 2, this is more like a honey consistency. She's just going to drip out of there like that. And that's what you want to have. And then if we go to our next level, we actually have to do a fort tine test because it's so thick it won't even fall out of this dripper or syringe. So I'll just pop it out of here and show what I'm talking about. It will not even go through it, it's that thick. So at that point, we do the fort test. It just wants to fall through the tines of the fort. And then my last level is extremely thick. When this comes off, it'll come off in a clump. It cannot be drank, it has to be spooned. These are all going to be different levels of choking hazards. Your dietitian and your speech therapist, or even you, are going to make those determinations on what those thicknesses are. These are just guidelines. They're not rules. They're guidelines for us to be consistent across the board. When I was in operations in healthcare, the guy that worked the morning shift thought a nectar was, and the guy that worked the night shift thought a nectar was completely different. So this way, we have a standardization to make your job and your production staff's job a little easier when it comes to production. And now on to foods with IDDSI. So we're going to start with level 7 and work our way to level 3. And basically what happens is as I go down from 7 to 3, the food basically gets finer cut or modified. With our number 7 plate, this is 7RG, which is regular. This is just no modifications. Whatever your diet is for your independent living or whatever, this is what you're going to serve to anybody that doesn't have a dietary restriction or a modification due to dysphagia or any other problem, bad teeth or whatever. And then if we're going to do our level 7 EC, which is easy to chew, I have on the green plate the same foods, just made a little bit differently. I have a chicken thigh instead of a chicken breast, a little easier to cut up with a fork. We have skin off diced potatoes, and the vegetables is going to be the same, as long as they're easy to chew and no modifications or special needs to make that, get that food broken down. So your 7 RG and 7 EC. Now we're going to talk level 6 IDDSI. Level 6 is going to be soft and bite-sized. Right here I have a 14 by 14 millimeter cut, potatoes, carrots, and then chopped chicken. The 14 millimeter is the IDDSI standardization on level 6. We like to incorporate machinery into level 6 and 5 because of my staff's potential to not get the sizes correct. So 14 by 14 is a fairly small cut, but if you don't know what millimeters are, or your dishwasher junior prep cook, he's not going to know what he's doing. So to create this dice size, we're going to use a dice kit. Dice kit comprises of a dicing grid with a bunch of very sharp blades on it and a slicer. And the unique part about this slicer is it's got a tapered backside. So as the blade comes around and gets a cut of it, it forces it down through that dice grid. Okay, so we're going to load up the machine here and show you how it works. So the grid goes in like this, into its notch. Blade goes in here. Now there's no other way for this product to come out of the machine besides through that 14 and then through the 14 by 14 grid. So I know no matter who's running this piece of equipment, if they have the right grid system in here, it's going to come out as I want it. So we load up the product in here. And hit our So as the food comes out the other side, this is 14 by 14. Nothing any bigger will get through this machine because of the way it works. It's always going to cut it this small. And then you have your 14 by 14 cuts. We are moving on to level 5, minced and moist with IDDSI. This is one of the more critical stages of the modification process. The standardization that IDDSI has worked with is 4 millimeter dice or smaller. We are actually using a 3 millimeter because we find that pretty much all the silverware, flatware out there, the tines of the fork are about a 3 millimeter separation, and we want the food to be able to fall through the fork. So I'm going to kind of go down here and show what this does. So my food needs to pass through those tines, and which means I have to have a pretty exact guy working the knife. And finding a staff to cut 3 millimeter exact every time is going to be very challenging. I know 20-year chef veterans who have a hard time dialing that one in. So that's when machinery comes into place. So one of the pieces of machinery out there is going to be a brunoise cutting blade here. So basically what this brunoise does is it's a julienne blade that will come around and cut a piece of that product. There's a notch on this blade that turns my hopper 90 degrees. As the blade comes back around, it cuts it again, creating a 3 by 3 by 3 millimeter cut. Exact. Doesn't matter what I try to put through here, it's always going to come out 3 millimeter. So we're going to show you how that looks. Open our hopper, throw in our container, throw in our blade, load up my carrots. And as this runs, you'll see this head spin 90 degrees pretty rapidly, but you'll still get an idea of what I'm talking about. As that comes out, everything that comes through that machine is going to be a 3 by 3 by 3. It's going to take my staff hours to cut three carrots for this plate. So this is a good way to get it done rather rapidly, plus it's going to be the same consistency every time. The other part of this is you could use some sort of food processor or emulsifier or blixer or whatever you want to call them. The problem with that is I can't guarantee that my pieces are going to come out of there as 3 by 3 by 3. Quite often there's always going to be a piece in there that's a little bit big. And if your staff doesn't catch that, it's going to get in someone's plate and going to be a choking hazard for someone down the road. So this one kind of eliminates that human element of error. You can achieve something like this with a emulsifier, blixer, blender, but you're still going to have to dig around for these pieces. And by the time you get every piece in there to the size you want it, you're almost pureed. So this is about the only way to get that nice, consistent, pretty cut. And we are moving on to level 4 with IDDSI. This is puree. Pureed food is going to be kind of a softer texture. It looks like it's formed up here, but when I show you the carrots at the end, it's a fine puree. And the biggest problem I have with pureeing is if I don't have a machine that's designed for emulsifying or blending like that, I have to add a lot of water to it. So if I'm using something like a straight blender, I have to add a lot of water to get that to pick the food up and actually puree it. At that point, my food is half water. Then I have to add a thickener to it, and now I've taken the nutrient quantity just way down. So best way to do that is to use an emulsifier, a blixer, things that are designed to break that down to a complete emulsion. And so we're going to use this unit today. There are many sizes. And you talk to your direct supply folks on which one would be the best size for you. The blade here itself is the blades kind of point down towards each other. And as this product gets run through this machine, it kind of pulls itself back into itself and makes that pure, full emulsion. So we're going to load up some chicken in here. Best bet to do in any one of these machines is not overload it and don't basically underbuy when you get one of these pieces of machinery. If you've got 20 pureed diets, this is too small. And so what we do is we load this up, and I always want to pulse it a couple times just to get that broken down. Okay. Now when I get that far, we'll let it run. With a scraper on the side of this bowl, it pulls all the stuff from the sides and the top down. And as you can see, I've got a fine, thick puree here with very little water added to it. And it's actually thick enough that I don't need to add any thickener to it. So this is a waste of money on this. And then once we get this stuff molded, you can actually make large quantities, freeze them, pull them as you need them, plate them up, and then we can retherm them right before service. So it's a little easier for your staff. You can see down here, close up on the carrots, I can actually run my fork through that. Same with the chicken, no modifications needed, and the potatoes. I have a full fine puree molded up to make it look like a regular meal. This is really critical for adding that dignity back into your residents or your patients' lives. Otherwise, you have 3 ice cream scoops on a tri-sectional plate and it looks like garbage. And this really just adds that little bit of extra to it. And as your residents, especially in long-term healthcare, as they age, that social life, that dining experience becomes the most important part of their day. And to add this to a little bit more, like I said, dignity into their lives, this is going to be very critical for your operation. We are now at the final level of IDDSI presentation with foods. This is level 3. Level 3 is one step beyond puree. We basically just use the same piece of equipment we use for the puree and just keep adding liquid until we get that liquefied consistency. Right here is what we're going to look like. Just falls right off the spoon. This can be drank. This can be used as a chowder type presentation. And then I always like to add some kind of nice garnish to jazz it up a little bit. I don't want to use stuff like chopped parsley or anything that add choking hazard into this situation, but like little jus or oils are always nice for presentation. Thank you for paying attention to our presentation.